I noticed when I walked around that those that did it, a lot of people had trouble with number 9. So let's go over that. And then today, we're not learning anything new. We're just practicing for tomorrow's quiz. Okay? What? Okay, so look, number 9. Number 9. You immediately notice that it's different because instead of a trinomial with 3 terms, it's a binomial. But doesn't it just mean that this was 2n squared plus 0n plus 11? Doesn't that just mean that this was a 0 and so that's why they chose not to write it? So you do it the same way. You identify your A, B, and C. A was 2, B was 0, C was 11. Then you find your discriminant. B squared minus 4 times A times C would be 0 squared minus 4 times 2 times 11. But when you type that in, this is what you'll see. 0 squared minus 4 times 2 times 11. Negative 88 is the discriminant. We learned yesterday that when you have a discriminant that's a negative number, it automatically means no solution. So there's no reason to continue working this problem. Now, can anybody tell me why it ends up no solution? But tell me more. You can't square root a negative. Because think about it. If we were to go into the quadratic formula at this point, wouldn't a negative 88 end up under that square root? And you can't square root a negative, so that's why you end up with no solutions. Also, let's talk about why on a graph. When we graph these, aren't the solutions where it crosses the x-axis? So if we graph this one, 2x squared plus 11, it never crosses or even hits the x-axis. I'm not sure where it is. Let me go back and make sure I typed it in right. 2x squared plus 11. Okay, let's try this again. Oh, true. Thank you. It goes up 11, so it's way up here. If I go up the window further to like up 20, then I see it way up there. See how it never hits or crosses through the x-axis? That's why it's no solutions. The solutions are where it hits the x-axis. Okay, now let's move to the next page for today's practice. Number 11. Number 11. It's already set equal to 0. So if we're going to solve this with the quadratic formula, we're ready to identify A, B, and C right away. What's A? What's B? And what's C? Then the first thing you need to do is go ahead and find the discriminant. And the reason it's best to go ahead and do that up front is so if it ends up negative, you know not to keep working because it's no solution. B is negative 1, A is 2, C is 6. Now we will type that in. Negative 1 squared minus 4 times 2 times 6. And you get negative 47. So good thing I went ahead and found the discriminant because now I know, don't waste my time, there are no solutions. Because my discriminant is negative. Okay, number 13. It's already set equal to 0, so if I'm solving this with the quadratic formula, what do I do first? Correct. Identify A, B, and C. What's the A? B, and C. Okay, so now we'll find the discriminant. B squared minus 4 times the A value times the C value. Okay, now let's type that in. That'll be 3 squared minus 4 times 9 times negative 17, which is 621. What does a discriminant of 621 mean as far as solutions go? Anytime your discriminant is a positive number, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's positive, it means you're going to have two solutions. To find those two solutions, we continue with the quadratic formula. So x equals negative b, which is 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, which we found to be 621, all over 2a, which will give you a 18, because your a value is 9, so 2 times 9 is 18. Now to find the actual solutions, you're going to type in negative 3 plus the square root of 621 over 18, and then negative 3 minus the square root of 621 over 18. That's obviously a fraction, so alpha y equals n over d will set up a fraction for you. Negative 3 plus the square root of 621 over 18. So there's your first solution. Now, if you don't want to have to type all of that back in again, you can just arrow up until it's highlighted, hit enter, and it'll copy and paste it. And then you can just go back in and cover up the plus with a minus. A minus, not a negative, a minus. And so your second solution is negative 1.6. It'll round up to a 6. So 1.2 and negative 1.6. Now, if I were taking this quiz tomorrow, you better believe that as soon as I got my solutions, I would graph it. Y equals 9x squared plus 3x minus 17. On the graph, I see it cross. Let me go back. How do I get back to my normal window? Zoom. Standard, number 6. Zoom 6 will take you back to your standard window. See how this part of the parabola crosses a bit past positive 1? Wouldn't that be that 1.2? And see how this one crosses, like, it almost looks like between negative 1 and negative 2, but a little closer to negative 2? Wouldn't that be the negative 1.6? So I would check them, because this quiz is not multiple choice. It's free response. Yeah. Because on the multiple choice test, all you got to do is graph and look at your answer choices. It's on paper. Okay, number 15. Number 15, it's already set equal to 0. So what's the A? What's the B value? And what's the C value? Then we plug them in the discriminant. B squared minus 4AC. Okay, then you type that in. Everybody type it in, but give people a chance to type it. Yes, what did you get? Which means we're going to have how many solutions, Maggie? 2. You got to pay attention. Not to me. Then you do x equals negative b. Well, if your b is already negative, won't that turn it into a positive 8? Plus or minus the square root of 784 all over 10. Because your a value is 5, so 2 times 5 will be 10. Now, you type it in this time. I've shown you how to type it in. Type them in and see what you get. Just give everybody a little bit of time. What did y'all get? 312. Which means we're going to have how many solutions, Ben? How many solutions? 2. If your discriminant ends up a positive number, you're going to have 2 solutions. If your discriminant ends up a negative number, you're going to have no solutions. If your discriminant is 0, you'll have 1 solution. Okay, to find these 2 different solutions, you finalize the quadratic formula. Negative b. Well, our b is already negative, so won't that be positive 12 now? Plus or minus the square root of 312, all divided by what? 4. Because 2 times the a value of 2 will make a 4. Now just type it in 2 different times, once with a plus, once with a minus. What did you get? Okay, and now I'm going to graph it to make sure y'all are right. Y equals 2n squared minus 12n minus 21. looks a little past negative 1, which would be the negative 1.4, and that looks past 7, between 7 and 8, which would be the 7.4. They just typed it in like this, but with a, watch. Alpha y equals n over d. 12 plus the square root of 312 over 4 would be 7.4. And then you would type it in again, but with a minus. 12 minus the square root of 312 over 4. Negative 1.4. It does get a little redundant. I'm sorry, because you have a quiz tomorrow. Number 19. Number 19, what's different about it? It's a binomial, but it just means that if you're identifying A, B, and C, your B is 0 because they chose not to write it, so it must have been 2n squared plus 0n minus 11. A is, and C is. Now you just do it the same way. So go ahead and do it by yourself. Alright, so x equals, I didn't do the discriminant yet, my bad. Okay, b squared minus 4 times a times c. B is 0, a is 2, c is negative 11. But when you type all that in, what do you get? 88. So this time, even though b was 0, we're still going to have solutions. We're going to have 2. Now the way you find those two solutions is x equals negative b, which really won't matter, but we'll write it so that I don't confuse anybody, plus or minus the square root of 88 all over 4, because 2 times 2 is 4. So really to find your solutions, all you have to type in is the square root of 88 over 4 and the negative square root of 88 over 4. You don't have to type in that part. And what do you get? Right. And then if you graphed it, you would see the lines of the parabola going through the x-axis, a little to the right of 2 and a little to the left of negative 2. Okay, next page. Okay, number 1. Number 1. You could solve this equation using the quadratic formula, but since we have practiced that so much in the last 2 days, let's go back and review another method, okay? I know, but on the test you can use any method you want, so I need to review them all. Okay, so watch. This is the method I'm going to do for this one. Now keep in mind, if you don't know how to do this, you don't remember, you can always do quadratic formula tomorrow. But look. Yeah, it's free response, so as long as you do a method and get the right answers, I don't care. Okay, this 5 is the leading coefficient. Well, this 5 can also be divided out of all 3 terms, which is called a what? Right, so I write the 5 on the outside, and then when I divide it out, it leaves r squared minus 4r, and then minus 12. Okay, so now what I have, now that I've factored the 5 to the outside, is I have a trinomial that I can factor by looking for 2 numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to negative 4. Negative 6 and positive 2. They multiply to a negative 12, and when you add those numbers, you get a negative 4. But then remember, when they're in factored form, they're the opposite sign of the final answer. So what would your final answers be? 6 and negative 2. So had you worked it with the quadratic formula, you would have also got 6 and negative 2. And then just like always, you can graph it and confirm. Y equals, what? No, this is factoring. Well, some are better than others. You have to choose the best way. Quadratic formula will work for all of them, but some of them you might just want to factor. It just depends. Okay, now look when I graph it. Don't you see it cross at negative 2 and positive 6? Okay, so now for you, I want you to practice number 3 by factoring out the GCF. Try to do it just like I did number 1. Go over how to do it. The first thing you should have done is notice that your leading coefficient is 2 And that 2 can also be divided out of all 3, making it the GCF. When you have to always do it by you can't just divide it by any number you want. It has to be the leading coefficient. So x squared plus 2x minus what? Now what you have remaining is a trinomial that you can factor by looking for 2 numbers that multiply to negative 48 and add to 6. Negative 6 and positive 8, but Benny, at this point, those have to switch signs. You would have to add the 6 over, making it a positive 6, and you would have to subtract the 8 over, making it a negative 8. Okay. Try number 5. Let's go over it. Peyton, what did you do first? Right? Plus 2x minus 3. Correct. Now, if you did quadratic formula for this, you would still get these same 2 answers at the end, and that would be where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, go ahead and try 7 and 9, and then we're moving. Number 7, what were the final solutions?
9 and negative 1.
Everybody agrees?
Yes.
And for number 9, what were the solutions?
2 and negative 6.
And everybody agrees? Okay, now let's go to the next page. Number 11. I've already said multiple times there's no homework. Number 11. How would you solve something that looks like number 11? No. What? You could. You could also do that, but let me show you the easiest way to solve these type. Turn around and pay attention. Okay. Shh, I can't remember, but this is the easiest type. The way to solve this kind is, think about it. Your goal is to get x by itself, right? Well, the only reason x is not by itself is that power of 2. How do you get rid of it? And that means we square it this side. So x equals the square root of 1, which is, but we should have 2 answers. Plus or minus, a positive 1 and a negative 1. So for number 13, if we're using that same method, couldn't we add the 24 over first? And then what could we do? Divide by that 6. And now you have m squared equals 4. And now to get m by itself, square root. So m equals the square root of 4, which is, but we should have 2 answers, plus or minus. Now, if you don't remember that method, couldn't you just say a is 6, b is missing, so it's 0, and c is negative 24, and solve quadratic formula? And you'll still get those same answers. Yes? Uh-huh. Yeah, but think about it. 1 squared equals 1. Negative 1 squared equals 1. That's why there's 2 answers, because both of them plugged in would make it equal 1. For number 14, I'm not going to do it. I'll just show you. You would just move everything to this side. So add the 10k over, subtract the 18 over, and then you would just do quadratic formula. A, B, C, and go. All right, number 15. Even though you probably won't, I'm assuming tomorrow if you had one like this, you're probably going to add it over and do quadratic formula. I'm going to review complete the square with one of these, okay? And remember, when I taught you complete the square, the very first step was move the constant to the other side. Well, isn't the constant already on the other side? So that's why I'm going to complete the square. It's already set up for that. What's the second step in completing the square? You take the b value, divide it by 2, and square it, and that will become 25. Then you do x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals negative 1 plus 25. Now what can I do on the left side? Right. You factor it by looking for numbers that multiply to 25 and add to 10. 5 and 5. And remember with complete the square, those always match. And on the right side, what's it become? Now what can I do since they match? Right. Write it as a binomial squared. And now to solve for x, what do I do? Square root it to cancel out that 2, which means we square root this side. Now we have x plus 5 equals the square root of 24, which is not going to be a whole number, so I'm just going to leave it in there, but I'm going to put plus or minus. And now the last step is what? Subtract the 5 to the other side. So your two answers come from square root of 24 minus 5 and the negative square root of 24 minus 5. So go ahead and type those in. What two solutions do you get? And negative 9.9. Now, like I said, if you don't want to complete the square tomorrow, that's fine. That's your choice. It's free response. It says solve any method you use. So you could have just added that 1 over and got your A of 1, B of 10, and C of 1 and done quadratic formula, and you would have still ended up with those answers. Okay? You just need to use whatever method you feel most comfortable with. Now listen, the right side of each of these pages is not homework. I will not be checking it. But if you go home tonight and you're looking for some extra practice, those are good extra practice. Okay? You can switch out.